Hi everybody, it's Jason here. It's that time of year again for my top 5 books of the year. So if you're new to my channel, every year I have a top 5 books for every year, usually books based around Eastern spirituality and philosophy, obviously, if you're familiar with my channel. Even though sometimes there are some books related to Eastern spirituality and philosophy, such as cognitive science and maybe like something like anthropology or evolution or something that may relate to Eastern spirituality and philosophy that may pop into the top 5. But this year it is purely books based on Eastern spirituality and philosophy. So I hope you enjoy. I read many good books this year actually, and these are just the top 5 I have read this year. And it's so hard to put these in order because like any of these could be number 1. But I put them in a particular order just based on the way I feel about the books at this moment. And I highly recommend any of these 5 books for any of you out there who are interested in Eastern spirituality and philosophy to take your understanding of the great traditions a little bit deeper. So let's get into the top 5. The first book is called The 7 Secrets of Shiva by Devdutt Patnaik. Now, Devdutt is a very controversial author in India. A lot of Hindus don't like Devdutt because he has written some books that may elaborate on the great traditions, especially Hinduism. And, you know, his Twitter feed is quite a spectacle. And a lot of people have, you know, a bad opinion of him because he has this Twitter feed where he may troll people and troll, you know, just the general populace. But he even said he does it in, you know, good humor and good taste because he finds the whole sort of Twitter sphere a little bit ridiculous and so forth and so on. But as you know me, I don't like to judge someone just based on the way that they behave, you know, online, and authors and that behave like that online. So there's usually an underlying motive for them, and that's a whole different conversation. My focus is the actual work that they produce. And this book, The 7 Secrets of Shiva, is an amazing book. As you all know, I'm a big fan of Shiva and Shaivism and have been around the tradition for over a decade. And this is an amazing book. And now, Devdutt is often described as the Joseph Campbell of our times. So he's very well-versed in mythology. He understands symbology, stories, especially related to Hinduism. And so this book goes into the symbology of Shiva. Like if we look at the Shiva Lingam, if we look at these sorts of symbols, he decodes these for us to have a deeper understanding of Shiva and even Brahman. And he explains a lot of these Sanskrit terms in relation to symbology and the myths that underlie the tradition. And so I highly recommend this book, The 7 Secrets of Shiva. And don't be too perturbed about maybe his reputation online or other books that he may have written. He has written many great books that are on point, and The 7 Secrets of Shiva is one of them. And this actually makes up a trinity of books, a trilogy of books, the Hindu Trinity series, which this one is obviously The 7 Secrets of Shiva, and then he has The 7 Secrets of the Goddess, and then he has The 7 Secrets of Vishnu. So, you know, the 3 main pillars of Hinduism. And it's really interesting because he gets into some of the differences between Shiva, the goddess, and Vishnu in this book. So I highly recommend this book for any of you. Now, the next book I want to talk about is the Mandukyo Upanishad, or the Mandukyo Karika. Now, the Mandukyo Upanishad is one of the most important texts, bar none. If you want to understand spirituality in general, or just understand your place in the universe, this is one of the most important texts in the world. And it's very difficult for me not to put this at number 1. Now, this is translated by Swami Nikhilananda. I've fallen in love with Swami Nikhilananda. And don't be surprised if you see another one of his books land in this top 5. But this translation of the Mandukyo Upanishad, you got to remember that this is not just a translation of the Mandukyo Upanishad. I have to clarify. We would call this the Mandukyo Karika. Now, the Mandukyo Karika is Gaudapada, who was Shankaracharya's teacher's teacher, so like his grandfather teacher, made a commentary on this, a Karaka. And Swami Nikhilananda actually translates Gaudapada's Karaka in this, and also Shankara's commentary on the Mandukyo Upanishad. And it's very important in this text because you're not just reading the Mandukyo Upanishad, like the brief Mandukyo Upanishad, you're actually reading, it's more about the commentary of Gaudapada and Shankara. And it'll just blow you away. This text will just blow you away. It's one of the most important texts in the world. Now, I've read a few different versions of the Mandukyo Upanishad or the Mandukyo Karaka, but when I landed on this one with Swami Nikhilananda, I mean, it was an end game for me. He's, in my eyes, one of the greatest scholars on Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta that I've ever read. So I highly recommend this text. And if you want to know the nature of your being, the nature of your existence, the nature of the universe's existence, this is the book for you to read. Now, the next book that we're going to look at is Zen The Authentic Gate by Kunyamada or Kunyamada Roshi. And now, this is a wonderful book, Zen The Authentic Gate. If you actually want to know anything about Zen, this is where you need to go. And this is one of the most simplified texts I've ever read on understanding not just the basics of Zen, but understanding the deeper elements of Zen. That's why this text is usually recommended for beginners, but also for advanced practitioners of who are familiar with Zen and have been engaged in Zen practice and Zazen for long periods of time. Now, Kunyamada Roshi was the leader of the Sanbo Zen tradition. Now, Sanbo is kind of a tradition that grew out of both Rinzai and Soto Zen. So it has both elements of Soto and Rinzai Zen within the tradition. And Kunyamada himself was a very interesting individual. Actually, for those of you who have been on the channel for a long time, would know last year, the book that was number one last year, Non-Duality by David Loy was actually a student of Kunyamada. So, we have a kind of a bit of a thread there where we have David Loy, which was book of the year last year, actually, Non-Duality, and now we have Zen The Authentic Gate by Kunyamada. And this is just an amazing text. Like I said, anything you want to know about Zen, you can know. Like it says on the back, there's 3 questions. Why practice Zen? What sets it apart from religion? What are its different practices? You will find out in this book. Highly recommend this book. Go out and grab yourself a copy. Now, the next text, number 2, is this. Now, I told you Swami Nikhilananda will make another appearance in this top 5, and here it is. This is the Atma Bodha, self-knowledge. It's a text by Shankaracharya, or Shankara, for those who are not familiar with that terminology. And Shankara being one of the great Advaita Vedanta teachers, along with Gaudapada, this is absolutely an amazing text. Like Swami Nikhilananda's translation of the Atma Bodha is amazing. Now, Atma Bodha here, as it says, means self-knowledge. Now, Shankaracharya explains in this book that you can practice devotion and, like, say, bhakti yoga and karma yoga and so forth and so on, and that's all well and good, but if you don't understand jnana, if you don't understand jnana yoga, self-knowledge, the knowledge of the Atman within you is identical with Brahman. If you don't have that self-knowledge of that undifferentiated consciousness and that non-dual reality that we're all a part of, and that you come back into resonance with when you go through deep contemplation and meditation, then you still haven't sort of figured out the game, even though you practice bhakti yoga, karma yoga, so forth and so on. This is why the Atma Bodha is very important, because Shankaracharya explains how to come back into self-knowledge. Now, self-knowledge here, again, self, not think of yourself as a person, think of yourself as Atman, beneath the Jiva, the undifferentiated consciousness. And so I will have a lot of videos coming up about this text, probably a few episodes of Sacred Word, unpacking a few of the deeper elements of some of the passages within this book. But why I've got this actually at number 2 is not just the translation, but also the introduction by Swami Nikhilananda, which is a long translation, which runs at about 130 pages, something around that region, is like a complete discourse on Advaita Vedanta and the non-dual reality of existence. It's an absolute amazing introduction. And that's why I put it actually in number 2, because the introduction is just like a teaching in itself, in and of itself, from Swami Nikhilananda. You could tell that he had imbibed a lot of the great knowledge from the masters before us and from the great traditions. And so to pay credit where it's due, then that's why he's a number 2. And again, it pains me not to put it at number 1, but you have to, for the sake of a top 5, you have to do these things. And so without further ado, the number 1 text is the Hua Hu Ching. So the later teachings of Lao Tzu. Now, I absolutely love this translation of the Hua Hu Ching by Hua Qing Ni. Now, Hua Qing Ni is an amazing Taoist teacher, and actually a few of his students have reached out to me because of the work I do, and have thanked me for covering this text. But I absolutely love this text, to be honest with you. And I said in one of my videos on the sacred word, where I covered a passage in this about reincarnation, that this almost stands alongside the Tao Te Ching. But it depends on, if you're a Taoist purist, maybe you're not going to think that. But it goes into so many deep elements and is sort of an extension of the Tao Te Ching. It really is. The problem that a lot of people have with this text, especially Taoist purists, is that it delves into things like reincarnation and other elements that are more closely tied to Buddhism. And so a lot of people then think that this is more of a combination of Buddhism and Taoism, and then the text was just created and cloaked covered with a Taoist covering. And so it's really just a combination of Buddhism and Taoism, and there's a lot of doubts that it actually came from Lao Tzu or who or whatever we perceive Lao Tzu to be, because obviously there's a perception that Lao Tzu as an individual, as a man, didn't exist. It was more of a group or a certain natural society. That's beside the point. But who or whatever the Lao Tzu was before, then there's a lot of doubt that this text came from him or them. But I don't share those sorts of concerns, because I read the text purely for what it is, and the text it's just amazing. It's sitting at number 1 for a reason for myself. It's one of the best texts I've read this year, and one of the best texts I've read in general. This specific translation, watching what he does, I think, better than the other translations of the Hua Hu Ching, is that the cultural nuance is a little bit more over this text. So you have a sense and a feeling of the tradition. You have a sense and a feeling of the time that this text came from. And the stories are a little bit more on point than some of the other translations, which can be actually just stripped of all of the cultural flavoring that should still be on the text. That's one of my own pet peeves, when people translate text but they take out the cultural flavoring of the text, because we need to understand the place that these texts came from and also the mind of the people that these texts came from. So in saying all that, this is the number 1 text of the year. But like I said, any of the 5 texts that I read could have been the number 1. So that's my top 5 for the year, people. I hope you enjoyed my brief summary of those texts. Drop a comment below and tell me what books were your favorite this year. Whether any of my books were your favorite this year. Make sure you like this video. Also share it with your friends. And I hope you're doing well. And all of the books that I've just mentioned, the links for those will be in the description if you're interested in buying any of those. And like I said, I hope you're all doing well. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.